Welcome into Up in the Rafters, a podcast brought to you by Inside Carolina this basketball season. I'm Taylor Vippolis hosting this. And as always, joining me, he's a national champion, the Final Four's most outstanding player, a Carolina basketball legend, Joel Berry. Joel, it's great to see you. I wish we had a win to talk about, but yesterday's game or Tuesday's game against Florida was kind of the same story for Carolina, with them struggling in the first half, trying to make a big comeback in the second half. Ultimately, they lose to Florida 90-84 in the Jumpman Invitational in your home of Charlotte, North Carolina. What were your opening thoughts from that game?
Initially, I just the concerns that we all have: shooting, rebounding, the passes that are kind of um off chart or not on point. I get all of that. The thing that stood out to me, man, was intensity and effort. To be quite honest, like you can have teams that don't shoot, and we were up by Carolina was up by 4 with 3 minutes left. Um, so you look at that and say, all right, I get that. They don't have as much size. I get that. But you look at points off turnovers, they had 24 points off of turnovers. What I'm saying is the game didn't turn around until Carolina finally woke up and realized that they were in Charlotte, North Carolina, in the Spectrum Center, going against another team. That's when they woke up. It's like me being in this chair right now, and I got my eyes closed, and you just slapped the crap out of me, and I'm like, oh shoot, all right, I didn't even see you there, but now I'm ready to go. Like that's the kind of knee-jerk reaction that they had, and I just think that's been the problem for them, is that intensity. And then once that happened, everything started flowing from there. I don't know if you saw it that way, but
Yeah.
that's how I saw it.
Yeah, and it's something that kind of on the Inside Carolina postgame show, Sherelle McMillan mentioned, where Carolina basketball has set like this standard for what Carolina basketball is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing on the court really isn't a lack of talent for the most part. There's some areas where this team struggles, particularly in the front court, but a lot of it does feel like it comes down to the fight, and just that attention to detail, because you see it in stretches where this team does look like they could play with anybody in the country. But the problem is their bad stretches are some of the worst stretches you could see in college basketball across the country. So I'm curious for your opinion, when you hear people saying things like the Carolina basketball standard isn't being met. How do you see that kind of playing out, being somebody that was a part in setting the standard for what Carolina basketball is supposed to be and supposed to be about?
Yeah, I think one, to my point earlier, it's like it's outside of the X and O's, and I think what a lot of people are looking back at, the standard is, okay, what did the national championship teams look like? That's the standard at Carolina, is what did those teams look like? You had a Tyler Hansborough, you had a Danny Green, you had a Ty Lawson, you had a Raymond Felton, you had a uh Sean May. I can go on and on. But when you think about those guys, you think about toughness, you think about intensity, you think about effort. The guys like Jackie Manuel and David Noel, like Marcus Ginyard, like these are that's the standard of like toughness, getting after it. That's what we don't see. I think that's what a lot of fans are yearning for. Like, we can miss shots. I mean, that's part of the game. But it's, to your point, when these stretches happen, they look like one of the worst teams in the country. Like they shouldn't even be on the floor. Like the initially starting that game, it just looked like they were just out there existing. Like, did they want to be there? And this is a game where you're going against the number 7 team in the country that's undefeated. and you got basically the home crowd behind you, and it just looked like they were asleep. So I think when people are looking at what you're talking about, the standard, that's what they're comparing the national championship team to what their national championship teams and great teams to what they're seeing. And outside of the X and O's, it's the intensity, it's the effort, it's the want to, it's the passion behind what you're doing. Like, I think that's what people are talking about.
Yeah, it kind of feels like, to one of your points earlier, it feels like Carolina's in a fight, and they don't realize they're in a fight until they get back to the locker room at halftime, and people are probably getting after them, and maybe putting the fear of God in them, because they do come out with their hair on fire in most second halves and trim a huge deficit and get back into a game. But these starts are really killing this North Carolina team, where Florida is up by as much as 17 points in the first half. It's just another game, another terrible start. Outside of just that, like, lack of fight, what did you see in the first half that kind of helped Florida, shoot 52% from the field, 41% from three, and just kind of getting whatever looks that they wanted?
Yeah, Florida was knocking down threes, and sometimes you just have to tip your hat to a team that's coming out and they're on fire. I mean, they 7 for 17 from three, 41%, 53%. There were a lot of shots that were contested. Could they have been more contested? Yes, but they were just knocking down shots. But I think what really separated them was Carolina was beating themselves, like going in, turning over the ball, them getting out on the break, and Florida just got some easy basket. Like, there were stretches that it would just, blow by straight to the basket for a layup, or blow by, get someone to help kick out three. And like, some of them weren't contested. They were just like warm up threes. So I just thought, like, for me, what my mind goes to is, okay, can those things be fixed? Is that just a lack of talent, or is that a lack of the will and want to defend and take care of the ball? That's why I'm optimistic, is because all those things that happen in that stretch, those are controllables. When you have controllables and you can change those, like, that's what you want as a team. And I just think when they go back and look at the film, they'll be able to see that. But that's what stood out to me. Just careless turnovers, and then the lack of intensity on the defensive end, where Florida was just running routine, dummy offense.
Yeah, that first half, North Carolina had 6 turnovers to only 4 assists, so not a recipe for good basketball. But the second half, I think a lot of Carolina fans, even if they're discouraged by the game, the bright spot in this game was the fight back, was the claw back,
Yep.
was the execution against a top 10 team to get back into the game. From that stretch of play where Carolina is down 17 to getting to the point where they're up 4 late in the second half, what were some of the best moments, and why Carolina was able to find success there?
They look like one of the best teams in the country. It's plain and simple. That stretch, when they came out of halftime, man, when things are going bad, you want to be able to clap. You want to be able to say, hey, guys, let's get this going. Like, I feel like this team, they only celebrate, or they only get fired up when it's like everything is going well. For example, in that stretch, it's something about intensity, man. Some, like, intensity has it to where if you're a 23 or a 20% 3-point shooter, just having intensity can make you a 40% shooter. Like, having intensity can make a guy like me, who had 0 career dunks, be able to dunk the ball. Like, it's crazy how it happens, but that's just what sports are. And then all of a sudden, now you're knocking down shots. RJ's knocking down shots. Ian's knocking down shots. Everyone's getting involved. The bench is getting involved. I just thought the defensive intensity had it to where like I was looking at Florida, and Florida all of a sudden looked tight. Like they looked like Carolina did in the first part of the game. And you can see that in body language. You can see Florida like, oh, we just woke up a giant. And then all of a sudden, the offense didn't look right. They started forcing stuff. They were coming around screens in the traffic. Just the intensity just picked up. And then all of a sudden, the X and O's, the shots made, the steals, everything just fell in line, man. That's why I really say it's not complicated. I know you want to point out all of these different things, but basketball can sometimes be a simple game, man. And that simple can be complicated. And that intensity changed for them, man. And it lit a fire up under them. And all of a sudden, all the things that weren't going well in the first half started clicking in the second.
Florida wins the rebounding margin by 10, 46-36. They finish the game on an 8-0 run over the last minute 48, and Carolina didn't score a point the last 2 minutes and 13 seconds. So what did you make of Carolina's late game execution and the struggles to get this game across the finish line?
Yeah, it was, again, back to all the controllables. You look at missed free throws. You look at passes where it's just, not paying attention to detail, being able to deliver the ball to RJ in his pocket, to at least give him a chance to come off of the pick and roll. Defensive blow-bys. But I think the one thing that stood out to me was box outs. Like in the last couple of minutes, man, I don't care if you knock someone over, because what ends up happening, yes, you're in the bonus, but you get a chance to at least, what if the refs don't see it, and then you be able to get a rebound and go to the other end. I think that's what stood out to me the most was the lack of attention to detail, the boxing out, and just late game execution. And quite honestly, RJ had the best shot he probably had all game, and just missed it. Again, another controllable. So these are situations that you work on. Like I remember in practice where we used to have the game either tied up or we would be down 4 or whatever Coach Williams wanted us to be down. And we would work on late game execution. We would work on taking care of the ball, just building that muscle. And so these guys have to be able to know, like, hey, we have control right now. Let's remember those times that we work on this in practice, and let's take care of the ball. So it's just 1 or 2 plays, man, at the end of the game that could have changed it.
A quick break so I can remind everybody about our friends over at Johnny T-Shirt. If you're going to be in Chapel Hill, you could visit Johnny T-Shirt on Franklin Street. And if not, no worries. You can go online to johnnytshirt.com. They have everything that the Carolina fan could possibly want. The hats, the T-shirts, the jerseys, you name it, they've got it. They have a limited time holiday sale going, a bunch of stocking stuffers. It's great people, great customer service. And don't forget, Inside Carolina premium members save 10% off their orders. Joel, outside of the rebounding margin in this game, I think one stat that kind of sticks out, Carolina goes 5 of 28 from 3. Florida goes 11 of 32 from 3. So Florida goes 34.4%. Carolina goes 17.9%. They're outscored by 18 on the 3-point line. How worrying is it that this team seems to have a pretty big lack of outside shooting?
Yeah, this is worrisome. Just because you need outside shooting. You can shift the defense. You can run great sets, but teams are built to guard the paint, and then from there they guard the 3-point line. And for Carolina to be able to utilize what they have going to the basket, or even just utilizing the big man, giving some space, you got to be able to knock down the 3-point shot. I remember a stretch one stretch in the game, I want to say it might have been RJ hit a three, um, and or it might have been Ian Jackson hit a three in the second half, and it's like Florida all of a sudden their mentality changed. They were like, "Oh, now Carolina's hitting outside threes," and then bam, all of a sudden you see RJ get to the paint, you see Elliott get to the paint, and then you see Captain Jack get in there flying around, getting to the rim. So um, it's worrisome. I mean, that's just a get in the gym and get some shots up, and but also remembering like how you generate those threes through good offense, getting in the paint and kicking out from three. Like, think about the amount of times people shoot on the gun. Where is that ball coming from? It's coming inside the paint and then it's coming outside to you in your pocket straight on, instead of coming from the side, the side. So that's why it's always a good step in three. So I just think generating good threes will hopefully for Carolina make that percentage go up a little bit.
Yeah, and outside of RJ Davis and Ian Jackson, Carolina shot a combined 1 of 13 from three,
Yeah, that can't
a
happen.
7%. I'm not sure how many games you're going to win when the majority of your team is shooting 7% from three. But we mentioned RJ Davis, Ian Jackson. If you're doing the glass half full for Carolina on Thursday when people are listening to this, Ian Jackson, I think in that second half, you kind of saw he should be playing more.
Say it one more time. Say it three more times. Say it 4, 5, 6. I mean, look, man, this dude, like just the way that he glides in, like some of them you look at like, all right, you got to be able to understand someone's walling up. You might have to change it a little bit or pick and choose your spots. But dude, off the bounce, bro, his gather to a cross a cross to the spin to the mid range or to the finish at the rim, he has to get more playing time. I'm sorry, he has to. I would even go as far as saying he has to start the game. He just brings a different type of energy. I understand you want that coming off the bench as a no drop off type of player, but you got to have that, man. You got to have that in the starting lineup. I mean, you've already kind of mismatched all these lineups. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? I don't understand it. But he has to play more.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing when people are saying that Ian Jackson should get a start and play more time, because it would be one thing if we were saying that and you look at the standings and Carolina's the number 5 team in the country, maybe 1 or 2 losses, they're playing really well and you don't want to tinker with it. But this North Carolina team is grasping for any sort of answers right now, and Ian Jackson in his minutes has seemed like he is a net positive and one of the only players on this Carolina roster outside of RJ Davis that can create his own shot.
Yep.
And everybody else, it's kind of standing around hoping somebody else can create for you. But Jackson seems like he seems like I think when the season started, people were like, I'm not sure if this is a first round talent. And now the more you watch him, the more you're like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm starting to understand.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it too. And he's starting. You can see the development. You can see picking his spots. You can see when to be aggressive and when not to. I mean, look at his stat line. Like, he got 11 points, and his fingerprints on the game just looked like it was so much more. Like the way that what he was doing looked like it felt like he had 20 points, but he only had 11. But it's on 5 of 9 shooting. Like, that's what you want. You want him to be efficient. And I just think he also has the ability with more time will be also another catch and shoot threat. Like, I just think he has that type of shot making ability. There's guys that just like, it's no matter what, like this dude, even if it's not pretty, for some reason, this dude gets it to go in the basket. He's that type of player where he's just a shot maker, man.
Yeah. And when you talk about efficiency, I think another positive that you could take away from this game was RJ Davis. He misses one of his last shots to the big three that would have completely changed the game for Carolina. But you look at him overall, 10 of 19 from the field. For this North Carolina team to get where they're trying to go, your preseason All-American, your preseason ACC Player of the Year, RJ Davis, is going to be a huge factor in that. Yeah. And it felt like the game against Florida was one of the first times this year where you've been like, okay, I recognize that RJ Davis.
Yeah, I mean, you could even say that. I think he ended up he had a big game against Dayton as well. But this game just seemed like what he was doing was in the flow of the game. Like it wasn't forced. Some shots, yeah, but he's the reigning ACC Player of the Year. You get a little to get the green light, you got to prove yourself a little bit. And some shots, the coaches they're willing to live with because of what you can bring to the team. But otherwise, I think that's what really stood out was the fact that he just did it in the flow of the game and had better looks and better opportunities to knock down shots where it wasn't forced. That's what stood out to me. But he's going to go. He's always going to show up. He's going to be at the top of the scouting report. The importance is getting the other players to consistently step up and be there when the teams are trying to keep the ball out of his hands or stop RJ from scoring.
All right, let's take a quick break so I can remind everybody about our friends over at Congruity. Congruity is the leading provider for Tar Heel business owners, payroll, HR, and employee benefit needs. Inside Carolina listeners can get a free payroll and HR assessment by emailing Matt at Congruity. Email is matt@congruityhr.com. That email again is matt@congruityhr.com. All right, let's get back to the episode. We're 11 games into the season, so it does still feel kind of early, but when you're looking at the schedule, Carolina's kind of running out of time to prove that it can be a tournament team when they have all these matchups against top 10 teams, and one by one, it's loss. Like, I don't think at the end of the season, the committee is going to be like, remember how close Carolina played that Florida game, or remember how close Carolina played one of these other ranked games. It's for the most part, they're seeing, did you win? Did you lose? Carolina is losing these games. Where do you think this team's margin of error is? Because it feels like by the week, it's shrinking to where they're going to have to be almost near perfect in ACC play.
Yeah, that's tough, because I'm the same way. Like, I don't like to weigh losses. Like, a loss is a loss. Obviously, a loss to, Bucknell compared to a Auburn, that's different. But, a loss is a loss. They're 1-5 in quad one opportunities, or in quad one right now. It's really a toss up in the air because it depends on how the committee does look at those losses, with it being with 4 top teams in the country. And some of them, and majority of them just being on neutral courts. And then they go into Kansas and have a potential to win that game. So it just depends on, like, obviously they do weigh the losses. So it just depends on how the committee turns that and looks at those losses. And it's kind of a toss up at this point, because also Dayton could turn into a really good opportunity. Yeah. Look at Michigan State. Obviously they lost that game, but if they continue to surge, that will also be a good loss, if you will. So there's no telling how the season turns out.
One of the things that I was reminded of, this isn't Carolina basketball related, but something I think it's funny to talk about at least. Did you see what happened to Doug Gottlieb?
Yes, I did see that.
He said earlier this week he was talking about wanting to play D2 schools, and he said part of the reason I want to play better teams is it's 2 degrees and snowing outside. I don't really like the idea of nobody coming in here What do we learn from a game that we win by 20 points? There's a methodology to it, and I'm going to have to adjust moving forward. No, nobody you, who I'm assuming is D2 Michigan Tech, came to Green Bay and beat them 72-70.
You gotta watch what you say, man. You gotta watch what you say. Listen, look. That's why you see the coaches in the interviews. They kind of just like are even keel. Look, we as players, you pay attention to what your coach say, and that has an impact on you. Those guys probably like, all right, coach, say we're good. Yep. You got shut up pretty quick.
I don't know what Michigan Tech's marketing team is like as a Division II school, but if in their bookstore they're not selling Nobody You t-shirts,
they're missing out.
Huge missed opportunity.
They are missing out. That is great advertisement. It doesn't get better than that.
And I don't know what Michigan Tech's NIL budget is as a D2 school, but if anybody from Michigan Tech is listening to this, I will be the number one supporter for this program.
Hey, it's probably not much, honestly. You could probably go in there and be big balling, and they'll look at you like Kingpin Vip.
Back to this North Carolina team. With all these losses to these ranked teams, and it feels like at the beginning of the season you go in with like a checklist of goals, and one by one those goals might be getting picked off with every loss kind of adding up. If you're in this locker room, how do you keep a group together and not let like the outside noise and people saying like you guys might not be a tournament team, when that might be true, but you kind of have to just focus on what you can control?
Yeah, and that's probably that could contribute to how they're just starting these games a little tight. I think that could be it. But you just have to stay. You have to stay within the team. You have to block out the outside noise. And yes, it sounds cliche, but like look, and also you have to look at the positive. Like there's a lot of positive. There are things that they can look at within the game and say, this is what we need to bottle up, and we need to come out from the jump and do. It seems like everyone's sort of frustrated because they feel like they're right there. Like the interview with Coach Davis. I just think he's trying to figure out what the answers are. But I truly think that the answers are pretty simple. And to the point where even if you don't know basketball, you kind of know what's going on. Like the intensity just isn't there. The attention to detail isn't there. And he's been in his interviews, he's been harping on that there's two things: defending and rebounding. Defending is one of them. Defending, I think, is the most important thing, and that's where Carolina has to get better. I think the frustrations are that they know that they're right there, and the outside noise is kind of tampering with that a little bit. So they have to do what they can to kind of they have to block it out to be able to move forward and pay attention to the optimism that they have, and seeing that this is something like the second half against Florida can be something that they can do from the jump.
We'll take one question from the fans on Instagram. I think we got to a good amount of what people wanted to talk about, and just the struggles that this team kind of has, and maybe the bright spots and how this team can potentially turn their season around. But this question from Aaron Jones. Joel, what do you think this team's best starting lineup would be to give Carolina the best chance moving forward at winning games?
The best starting lineup for me is Seth Trimble, RJ Davis, Ian Jackson, Jalen Withers, and Ben Allen Lubin. I just think that, with Ian, He gives you another playmaker. He gives you another ball handler. He gives you another guy that can potentially catch and shoot. You have to have Seth on there because he makes a lot of plays that just don't show up on the stat sheets. And he is a disruptor defensively, which can create those plays that give you that fire that you need. Obviously, RJ. I like Jalen because he brings athleticism at that 4 spot. Is very mobile, which allows them to switch 1 through 4, even 1 through 5 with Ben Allen. I honestly think that lineup would be the best lineup to start the game.
It would be interesting, and I think Carolina, you're probably going to see lineup shakeups coming just because, like we talked about before, it hasn't been working. So,
yeah,
trying to
reshuffle something new.
Yeah, reshuffle the pieces that you have, but also to me, I think one of my issues with this team is it feels like they're trying to like find the missing puzzle pieces and put the puzzle together. There's a chance you're just missing a couple pieces in this puzzle.
I think I 100% agree. I just think that you see it kind of happening, and obviously they got to play the game, so it's like you see some ugliness, but I think that ugliness is going to turn into something positive for Carolina. But that's what people are seeing is what coaches have problems with in the early season, and now it's even harder now with the transfer portal, is because it takes time for those pieces to overlap where you're putting guys in to be able to utilize their strengths to the best of their abilities. That's the problem right now, and I think they're still trying to figure that out.
Another ranked team on Carolina's schedule coming up with UCLA. It's the CBS Sports Classic from Madison Square Garden in New York, the world's most famous arena, this Saturday.
Another opportunity.
This team has been nothing short of opportunities this season. We'll see if they can get in the win column against a ranked team here. 3 p.m. tip-off on CBS. Joe, we'll be back to break it down next week. TBD on what day we record, because we have Christmas, and a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everybody out there. But Joe, man, appreciate the time as always, and appreciate everybody watching and listening.
Yes, sir. Happy holidays.